So this video is on solving. So for the warm-up, go ahead and do the warm-up and then check your answers on the answer key that's posted on Canvas. So there's a couple ways you can solve quadratics. So one is using the zero product property. So the zero product property says that anything that's multiplied together, if it equals 0, then each of the pieces will equal 0. If you have factors, like example number 2 right here, x and x plus 2, then you're going to set each of them equal to 0. So x is going to equal 0, and then x is going to equal negative 2. So let's go ahead and do example number 1. So we have x minus 3 times x plus 2, and it equals 0. So because these are both already factors, and they're being multiplied, I can set each one equal to 0. And then I'm going to solve each one individually. So I need to get x by itself, because that's what we're solving for. Well, there's a negative 3 next to the x, so in order to get the negative 3 to the other side, you have to do the opposite sign. So you're going to add 3 and add 3. When you do that, negative 3 and positive 3 cancel out, so you have x equals positive 3. Okay, let's do the same thing for the x plus 2 equals 0. So again, I need x by itself. So I have to subtract 2 from both sides. 2 minus 2 cancels out. So you're left with an x on the left, and 0 minus 2 is a negative 2. So let's look back at the original. So we had an x minus 3 that became an x equals a 3. We had an x plus 2 and then an x equals negative 2. So if you notice, it was a negative 3, now it's positive. It was a positive, now it's a negative. So when you're solving, and it's just a basic one-step equation, it's just an x plus a number or an x minus a number, each of your signs are going to switch. Okay, that changes a little bit for letter B, our second example, because our first one is 2x minus 1. So I have 2x minus 1 equals 0, and then I have x plus 4 equals 0. Well, the x plus 4 equals 0 is just an x plus a number, so it's just one step for subtracting. So x equals negative 4. And I could have seen that just by looking at the original. When you're solving, you switch the sign. Well, on this other one, though, it's not just an x. It's a 2x minus a 1. So that's a two-step equation, so we can't really use the shortcut as much. So I need to solve. Again, I need to get x by itself. So I have to get rid of the 1 first. Plus 1 plus 1. So now I have a 2x equals 0 plus 1 is 1. Okay, I'm still trying to get x by itself, and it's not by itself because it has a 2 in front of it. Well, 2 is being multiplied by x, so the opposite of multiply is divide. And remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So now I have x equals 1/2. Go ahead and pause this video, and I want you to try numbers 1 and number 2. So number 1, it's okay, but you're going to have 3 answers because we have that, this, and then a third one. Same thing for number 2. You have 3 pieces to it, so you'll have 3 things you're setting equal to 0 and solving. Okay, so for number 1, you should have got from the 3x minus 2, x equals 2/3. The 4x plus 3 gives you a negative 3 over 4, and the x plus 4 gives you a negative 4. On number 2, the x minus 3, you switch the sign, so it's x equals a 3. 2x plus 5 gives you a negative 5 over 2, and 5x minus 1, the last one, gives you a positive 1 over 5. So that's if they're already factors for you, right? They're all in separate parentheses. Well, what happens if they're not all in separate parentheses? That's okay. It says, in order to solve for the solutions, the quadratic has to be set equal to 0. And then you're going to check for a GCF to divide out before you start factoring the quadratic. Remember, when we're factoring, GCF is always your first step. So for number 1, very first thing we have to look for is it set equal to 0? Yes, it is set equal to 0. So we can go ahead and just start factoring. So number 1 has an x squared, an 8x, and a 12. So my a value on this is a 1. So because of that, there is no greatest common factor. So we're just going to start factoring. And remember, we factor when there's 3 things, when it's a trinomial, by using big X. So we do first times last. 1 times 12 is 12. And you add to the middle number, so we're adding to 8. And this is not a fancy fraction because our a is 1. So both sides are just going to have an x on the bottom. So the numbers that make 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, or 3 and 4. So we have to make an 8. So a 1 and a 12 isn't going to work. Neither is a 3 and a 4. But a 2 and a 6, if I add 2 plus 6, it makes an 8. So a 2 plus a 6, and then the 2 was positive as well, so I'm going to put a plus sign on it. Remember, this is where we do bottoms up, and we bring the x to the top in order to make our factors. So 2 over x is actually x plus 2. 6 over x becomes an x plus a 6. And remember, we're not just factoring for these, we are now solving. So because we're solving, it was set equal to 0. So I need to bring down that equal to 0. Now, just like above, we're saying x plus 2 equals 0, x plus 6 equals 0. And each of these are just one step. Minus 2, x equals negative 2, minus 6, x equals negative 6. And for these, you can check your work to see if you're correct. So in order to check your work, if you wanted to check it, you have to take each of these separately and plug them back into the original. So let's go with negative 2 first. So I'm checking to see if x equals negative 2. So my original equation, I'm just going to rewrite it, was 0 equals x squared plus 8x plus 12. And I need to plug in this negative 2 in for each of the x's. In this case, there's 2 of them. So I have 0 equals, my x was squared, and so that means you need parentheses. So negative 2 squared plus 8, and then again where the x is, put parentheses, negative 2 plus 12. So that's 4 minus 16 plus 12. 4 and 12 make a 16 minus a 16. So that's a 0. And originally we had a 0. So 0 equals 0, that's true. So negative 2 works. Okay, you're going to do the same thing for negative 6. So we had an x squared plus 8x plus 12. Oh, and that equaled 0. So 0 has to equal negative 6 in both of those. Negative 6 squared is 36. 8 times negative 6 is negative 48 plus 12. Let's see, 36 and 12 is a 48. Minus a 48 gives us a 0. And the left side is still 0. So does 0 equal 0? Yes, it does. which means both of our original answers were correct. Okay, let's go on to number 2. It has to be equal to 0 first. Number 2 is not equal to 0. We have an 18x equal to an x squared. So x squared is positive, so I'm going to move that 18x to join him. So just like we did above, 18x is positive, so you have to do the opposite. So I need to subtract 18x from both sides. Does it look a little weird? Yeah, but it's right. 18x minus 18x is 0 equals x squared minus 18x. They're not like terms. So you're just going to do x squared minus 18x. Okay, next we're factoring. So I need to factor this piece right here. Well, there's only 2 pieces, right? It's not a trinomial, it's a binomial. So we have to ask ourselves, is there a number that's going to go into this one and this one? Well, no, because the number in front of x squared is just a 1. Okay, but there's also letters that can go into both. I have 2 x's here, I have x squared and an 18x. So I can pull an x out of both of those. Remember, whatever you divide by goes on the outside. X squared minus x is an x. I have an 18x divided by an x, so those go away. So I just have minus 18. But again, for all of these, we are not just factoring, we are solving because it was equal to 0. So you have to take all of your pieces. So I have 2 pieces here. I have an x and I have an x minus 18. So if I take the x, you set each piece equal to 0. Well, that means x is already equal to 0. Done. Then I have x minus 18 equals 0, and it's just a one-step equation, so x is going to equal 18. Okay, on to number 3. It's still not equal to 0, so I need to do just like I did here and move this x to the other side. So I have to do that by subtracting it. So you have 0 equals, and now you have an x squared, a minus 42, and a minus x, but it has to be in standard form. That says x squared goes first, then your x, so minus x, and then your number, minus 42. Now it looks like what we've been factoring. So go ahead and pause this video and see if you can factor x squared minus x minus 42 using big X. When you're done factoring it, unpause. So when you factor, you should get x plus 6 and x minus 7. So now we have to solve. X plus 6 becomes x equals what number? We just flip it, so negative 6. X minus 7, you flip the sign, so it's x equals a positive 7. Okay, on the back of these notes, we are solving by square root, so go ahead and go to the next video.